Welcome back, and it's time for us to talk about black tax. Now, in case you didn't know or are not sure what black tax is, this is the name given to that support you give your family after you have gotten a job. And, you know, there's all manner of ways that it is put. When you have been educated and maybe you leave the village and go to the city and get a job, it is expected that you will support those at home by sending them money or even paying fees for your siblings and the younger ones. Sometimes it even goes to the extended family where you have your cousins and your uncles who expect that because they educated you, because they brought you up, that you owe them. And that is what is referred to as black tax. How fair is it? Is it supposed to go on? What do we do about it is the discussion. As usual, you are welcome to participate in this conversation, and I'll be reading through your comments as we go along. Joining me to have this conversation, we are joined by Gregory Ngugi, who is a psychologist. We are also joined from Kisumu by Davis Okombo, who's a children's rights advocate, and is joining us via video link. So that's a discussion that we're going to have. And let me start with you, Gregory. Is it fair for our families to expect that because they have brought you up and because they paid your fees and fended for you and took care of you, that now that you've got a job, that you must support them?
Thank you very much. First of all, it's a very tricky situation we found ourselves in, because there is some of ideas that we live in this world of debts. We are full of debts. Me growing up, me living today, I'm full of debt because I am part of the social web that has continuously contributed to my psychological well-being, which is a need for survival. However, is it fair or not fair? I think for me it's a balance that an individual needs to strike. And as we are growing up, we have to grow through a process. And this particular process, I have to be aware of myself. And being aware of myself is knowing that at every developmental stage, what is this that I should be doing? And majorly, I should differentiate. Differentiate means I have found myself, I have known my limits, and I have known how to exist within myself and within this particular social web that I have. If any of this circumvent the other or becomes bigger than the other, then I'll not be functional. What does dysfunctionability mean? One, I'm not even able to practice self-care, i.e., I'll always be in debt, like we are saying here. I'll always be manipulated. I'll always be blackmailed. I'll also be always be wanting to get these people on my side, and right, they'll always manipulate me. So I think for me it's a tightrope to walk. Yes, okay. Yes, and it needs somebody who is aware of himself and knowing that yes, I am part of me, and also I am part of this social web that I cannot really exist without.
All right, let me hear from Davis Okombo, who's a children's rights advocate. Davis, is it fair that our families expect that after they have fulfilled what I would call their rightful duty? Bringing up a child is really, you cannot say you've done extra, you've only done what is right. But then out of that, we kind of expect that now we shall get support from that child.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Mr. Gitonga. I think first we have to define who a child is and see whether it is fair and right to expect a child to contribute financially to the well-being of the family. The UN Convention on the Rights of the Child defines the age of a child and puts it as any person below the age of 18 years. And also the Children Act of 2001 and the Constitution of the Republic of Kenya 2010 defines a child in the same way that the Convention on the Rights of the Child provides. And therefore, it is extremely difficult for me to accept that parents expect young children to contribute financially to the well-being of these families. Having said that, Mr. Gitonga, it is important for us to look at the age dependency ratio, which is the sum of population in the age of 0 to 14 years, and also those elderly people in the age of 65 years and above, against the working population, which is the age of 15 years to 64, then we can be able to see the effect of black tax in our society. In Kenya of today, 68.3% is the ratio of the age dependency ratio, and therefore this is a subject that we cannot run away from it. We need policies, we need guidelines that are going to help us to reduce the negative effects of black tax in our communities.
And coming to you, Mr. Ngugi, the thing is, how do we draw that balance? If you look at the Western world, they pretty much have insurances for everything, such that in case, for instance, of death, one has insurance to make sure it takes care of their funeral expenses and everything. Whereas our African context, and let me say Kenyan, is more support from family. So we have a cohesive community. So it's not a bad thing that people support their families, but where do we draw that balance? Because if I have, for example, been brought up in the village and I am now in the city with a nice job, at what point do I build myself? Because I'm left with the responsibility of bringing up my siblings, paying for my cousins' fees, and maybe my parents' medical bills. How do we draw that balance?
First of all, we have to look at the two generations. I think as a parent and as an upcoming one, I need to take care of myself and know a time will come when I will not have a payslip. And when I don't have a payslip, how will I exist? I have to be aware of this and start doing something now. Another thing is this. If I have these particular obligations, because we have different psychohistory, if I have these obligations with me, I have to understand who is the most important person in my life. And as a psychologist, the most important person in my life is myself. If I cannot take care of myself, pay my bills in Nairobi, because there is the bare minimum, you have your budgets, you know very well. I cannot really invest. I cannot take care of my family here, the immediate family, my own spouse and my own children. And possibly then from there, it is now as need arises. And I'm aware that the blackmailing, I'm aware that there is a sense of insecurity. We've been being told what to do, but what to do is actually for you to actually figure it out. So, as I said, it's a very tight decision. It's a very tricky decision that you have to do. However, it all starts with you. For you to take care of others, you can only take care of them if only you take care of yourself. So start with yourself. If you're not careful, you're the person who will go back to the village, and the same cousins, the same brothers, the same people, they will actually remind you that it was not your obligation to actually take care of me. I have found people who have shared this in my therapy room, people who are bitter with life because all they did was to think that possibly we are a brother and a sister. Believe me, after 18 years, you have to differentiate. You have to have a space of an individual and strive to be functional, because you have no friends. You have no friend. Ni wewe na hali yako.
Ni wewe na hali yako. Mr. Davis Okombo, question is, how does this affect the growth and freedom of children? The fact that they feel they have this huge responsibility, and sometimes it comes at a very young age where they're expected to now take care of the bigger family, the larger family, simply because they have now gotten a job. And that job sometimes is not even paying much. It's purely just a manual or casual job that you've got in the city. So how does that affect the growth and the freedom of the child?
I think first it is important to understand that in the pre-industrial societies and also at the time of industrial revolution, thousands of children were subjected to child labor. And one of the greatest authors in the world by the name Charles Dickens wrote a book known as Hard Times that was able to capture the challenges that the children and other laborers were facing during the time of Industrial Revolution. Now, before I can discuss the effects of child labor, it is important for us to understand that the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child provides for the prohibition of child labor. And furthermore, the International Labour Organization, Convention 138, provides for the minimum age of entry into labor. In addition to that, the ILO Convention 182 calls for the prohibition of the worst forms of child labor. Now, what are the worst forms of child labor? This includes child prostitution, and Mr. Gitonga, you will agree with me that in Kenya and other parts of Africa, sex tourism is practiced. A lot of our children are being subjected to commercial sexual exploitation.
Right.
When this happens, one, they are deprived of their right to education because they have to spend their time and energy on child labor, some of which are the worst forms of child labor. Secondly, we have seen situations where the physical, emotional, and psychological development of the child is affected directly by the worst forms of child labor. How do you explain to a young girl of 12 years having a sexual relationship which is exploitative with a man of 65 years old? This child will continue to suffer trauma. And that is why we call upon the government to strengthen the protection of children in our country so that we can build a future, we can have a safe and fair society for the children in Kenya.
All right, and Mr. Ngugi, oftentimes this black tax is driven by guilt, and even the way it's phrased sometimes will just create that guilt. How do we snap out of the guilt part of it, where you're told, we educated you, therefore you pay back by taking care of us?
For me, it's a process. It's a process because for you to have come to Nairobi, maybe you came from the village, all the way you came and lived with your auntie. This auntie was very courteous, was very gracious to you, and possibly you move from there, they connect you with a job. And finally, you have stood and possibly you're doing very well. I think for me, it's a process. One, you have to always consider yourself. For me, all said and done, you come first as an individual. I come first. Before my wife comes, I come first. Before my children come, I come first. If I'm able to take care of myself, then I'm able to take care of others. How do I take care of myself? One, I have to understand the system that I'm in, that I have to have an interaction with my environment and with my age. What does my age require here and now? I am 35 years old. I have young children. I have a family to take care of. Yes, my parents are there. They are at the sunset. Who comes first? Is it my brother or my parents? If I'm able to actually get something and possibly take care of my brothers, taking care of them means what? Showing them how to fish. Not giving them fish, not creating dependency. If I'm aware that the people around me, I am creating dependency, then I am actually doing disservice to myself as an individual. If my parents are at the sunset, how do I really support them? What is their basic need? And how, maybe as a family, me and my brothers or my sisters, how can we ensure that we have a system in place that takes care of our old parents back in the village? However, for me, it is a process, and you have to call yourself a meeting and possibly understand that the day you didn't have that job, how were you able to relate with yourself and how are you able to relate with the environment? Suppose this particular job is not there. Who will take care of yourself? If you cannot take care of yourself, ultimately, till the last plate of food or till the last cup of tea you will take under the world, believe you me, life will not be easy for you. And it is a process. I'm not saying that possibly you drop off all of them. No, they are very, very important. But don't give them fish. Show them how to fish. Give them opportunity to actually advance their life in a way that they contribute also. If you have to delay going to college, if you have to delay going to school, kindly delay 1 year, 2 years, so that maybe you don't need to have 4 of your brothers in different colleges, and you have your own family. You have to take care of yourself in a point that you become bitter at work. You're not functional. You're bitter. You're thinking possibly the world is against you. You've taken bigger responsibility. Kindly take care of yourself and ensure that possibly you come up with a mechanism to give them fish, to show them how to fish and not to fish. And parents at the sunset, let's come up with a system as sisters and brothers to actually see how we can support our parents.
All right, and let me come to you, Mr. Okombo. Now, we are socialized in this way, and it has become a mindset whereby traditionally we are, taught and brought up to take care of our families and our parents and our relatives. How can we change this mindset and culture so that we are able to develop ourselves, and like Mr. Ngugi says, develop to a point where you can take care of yourselves before you take care of others? We're not saying don't take care of the family, but how do you take care of the family when you have not taken care of yourself? How do you change the mindset?
I agree that we do have a strong kinship in Africa. In South Africa, it is called Ubuntu, and this requires us to be responsible for the most vulnerable members of our population. Now, it is not easy to walk away from this age dependency, because if you look at the needs of the most vulnerable part of our population, for children, their greatest need is education, and therefore we need an investment in education of the children. And for the elder people, there are the questions of social security, the questions of their health security, so that they can have access to health care. Now, it is upon us to call upon all the people of Kenya and also the government to ensure that we can develop minimum social protection floors, because it is so easy to say that we will turn blind eyes to the plight of the elderly and the children. It is so easy to assume so, but it is not possible. Mr. Gitonga, how will you react if you go home, for instance, and you find your old grandfather probably at the age of 99 years and is sick, and already the NHIF have said that they are not going to provide care for COVID-19. So I think it is important that we have to look into that.
Okay. All right, and I'll need your closing remarks. Let me start with you, Mr. Ngugi. Your thoughts and your closing remarks on how we as a society can ensure we take care of our families, but at the same time, there is ample room for one to develop themselves and build themselves.
For me, the greatest attribute of maturity is responsibility. And I have to know that I have to be responsible of myself right from the word go. When I'm socializing my children, I'm telling them, yes, you have to actually take care of yourself and take care of the people around you. However, you can only take care of them when you take care of yourself first. That, for me, that is the first thing. The second thing, for those people who are working and possibly we are parenting, make sure that possibly you have something for yourself. Otherwise, you don't become a dependent and you don't become a parasite. Sorry to say this, a parasite to them, because believe you me, it is a new civilization, it is a new world that has opportunities for people to actually invest and for people to actually come up with, have a plan for their lives, i.e. you're not manipulated by others, take care of yourself, stand for yourself, and it all starts with you and ends with you.
All right, and Mr. Okombo, a strong word there, parasite. Your advice to parents and even to the young ones now, because with time they're going to be the ones who will be waiting for their children to help them, how to set yourself up so that later in life you're not that parasite. All right, Mr. Okombo, maybe you didn't hear me. The question is, how do we ensure, or your advice to parents, as we continue, as we conclude, not to be a parasite to your children later? All right, it looks like we have lost that link, so we'll just wind it up right there. But thank you very much, Mr. Davis Okombo, a children's rights advocate, and Gregory Ngugi, who's a psychologist, for joining us this morning just to have that discussion on black tax. And as we wind up, maybe just to look through some of your comments that have been coming through, the question that we had asked earlier on is in regards to the, well, we had asked, do you support the indefinite suspension of the signature collection drive, which was set to kick off today? And quite a number of comments have come through. We should first focus on dealing and stopping hulabalooing with the Kenyans. That is from Carson. We have Kim Daniels, who says, yes, 100%. Yes, hallelujah. Jesus is Lord. A BBI snake shall be destroyed in Jesus' name. Wow. Okay, some very interesting thoughts right there. Davis Alwanga, who says, even 3 shall not support. We have Korir, who says, absolutely yes. And I think